There are many ways to die during wartime, but few are more agonizing than death by starvation. In 2015, a Dutch harbor dredged up a time capsule from the bottom of the sea, a rusty Second World War ship filled with countless mementos from the past. And it wasn't until they opened one of the cargo holds that the full horror of the find became clear. The team discovered thousands of human bones stacked in neat piles inside the hold. This was far from your average shipwreck. This was a ghost ship from hell. What follows is one of the most horrifying tales of human cruelty ever told. From overcrowded ships to bone-crushing machinery and mass killings, you're about to see some of the worst things humans can do to one another. The hell ships of Japan. At the height of the Second World War, the Japanese military embarked on an ambitious plan to capture Singapore. As part of their Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere, Japan sought to forge an alliance with the British Empire and expand its territories across the Pacific. But the mission was doomed from the start. Instead of winning over the local population, Japanese forces committed atrocities against civilians, earning them a reputation for extreme brutality. But this was nothing compared to what would happen when they set sail for Australia. After capturing Singapore, the Japanese army set their sights on the next objective, Australia. They knew that capturing the continent would be impossible, but they wanted to make it bleed. So the war of attrition began. As the conflict dragged on, Japanese officers came up with increasingly bizarre ways to defeat their enemies. One such method was to build ghost ships to carry prisoners of war across the ocean. These ships were designed to be as uncomfortable as possible, lacking any amenities or even basic supplies like food and water. It was as if the Japanese soldiers wanted to make the journey as unpleasant as possible. But why did they do this? Was it simply a sadistic desire to cause suffering? Or was there a deeper psychological motivation behind their actions? Unfortunately, the answer is both. The Japanese soldiers were motivated by a twisted sense of honor and a fanatical belief in their own superiority. They saw the war as a crusade to unite all of Asia under Japanese rule, and anyone who opposed them was a threat to their vision. Prisoners of war were not seen as human beings, but rather as obstacles to be eliminated. The goal was to break their spirits and force them to submit to Japanese domination. But the harsh conditions on board the hell ships went far beyond anything imaginable. Crammed into rusted cargo ships, thousands of Allied POWs disappeared without a trace. With no food, no water, and no way out, these prisoners weren't just casualties of war. They were trapped in floating coffins. But how did the Japanese get away with such a heinous crime? Well, the answer lies in the murky waters of the past. In the depths of World War II, the Japanese military built an arsenal of ghost ships to transport prisoners of war across the Pacific Ocean. These ships were designed to be as inconspicuous as possible, blending in with civilian vessels and avoiding detection by Allied forces. Once on board, however, it was clear that these ships were no ordinary transports. They were mobile prisons, devoid of basic amenities and designed to inflict maximum suffering. One of the most notorious hell ships was the Japanese transport vessel known as the Lisbon Maru. On September 9, 1942, the Lisbon Maru set sail from Shanghai bound for Japan. But this was no ordinary voyage. The ship was carrying a cargo of nearly 8,500 Allied prisoners of war, mostly from China, crammed into its dimly lit hold. The prisoners were forced to sleep while standing, and many became ill due to the lack of sanitation. After weeks at sea, only a fraction of those on board survived. Many died from starvation, disease, and exhaustion, their bodies left to rot on the ship. Those who did survive emerged from the hold, emaciated and traumatized, forever haunted by their experience aboard the Lisbon Maru. But the Lisbon Maru was just one of many hell ships used by the Japanese military to transport prisoners of war. Other vessels such as the Gyoen Maru and the Akebono Maru carried thousands of prisoners on similar journeys across the Pacific, all in the name of Japan's twisted vision of honor and duty. But the story doesn't end there. In the aftermath of World War II, the Japanese military was held accountable for its atrocities, including the use of hell ships. But the full extent of the horrors that unfolded on these vessels was not fully revealed until decades later. Many survivors remained silent for fear of ridicule or disbelief, while others simply couldn't bear to relive the trauma of their captivity. However, as time passed, more and more survivors came forward with their stories, shedding light on the dark secret of Japan's hell ships. Today, memorials and museums commemorate the victims of these atrocities, serving as a reminder of the darkest chapters in human history. Despite the horrors they endured, the survivors of Japan's hell ships remain an inspiration to all who hear their stories. Their strength and resilience in the face of unimaginable adversity serve as a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity. What really happened on board? Japan's hell ships. Life on board Japan's prison ships was a nightmare from which many never awoke. Crammed into the dark, dank holds of rusty vessels, prisoners of war were subjected to horrific conditions that resulted in unimaginable suffering and death on a massive scale. But what exactly happened on board these infamous ships? Let's take a closer look. As the prisoners were loaded onto the ships, they were met with a scene of utter chaos and despair. The holds were overcrowded and unsanitary, with little room to move and no access to fresh air or sunlight. With barely enough space to stand, let alone lie down, prisoners were forced to sleep while standing, and often fell victim to diseases such as dysentery and cholera. Without access to clean water, the prisoners were forced to drink from contaminated sources, further weakening their already fragile health. To make matters worse, the Japanese guards oversaw the entire process with a complete disregard for human life. They watched with amusement as the prisoners struggled to survive, taking sadistic pleasure in their torment. It was a terrifying and heartbreaking sight that has left a lasting impact on the world. But the horrors of the prison ships didn't end there. Prisoners were also subjected to brutal punishments and torture at the hands of their captors. Any attempt to escape or resist was met with swift and severe retribution, often in the form of physical abuse or even death. Some prisoners were beaten to death, while others were thrown into the ocean as an example to the rest. The Japanese guards seemed to find joy in inflicting pain and suffering, making the entire journey a living hell for those on board. It's hard to imagine the level of desperation and despair that must have consumed the prisoners as they faced starvation, disease, and brutality on a daily basis. But despite the unimaginable odds, some managed to survive the ordeal and tell their stories to the world. Their testimonies serve as a reminder of the importance of remembering and honoring those who suffered and perished on Japan's prison ships. What do we remember from this dark chapter of history? The legacy of Japan's prison ships serves as a stark reminder of the depths of human cruelty and the importance of fighting against oppression and injustice. The stories of the prisoners who endured the horrors of these ships should be remembered and honored, not only as a tribute to their suffering, but also as a call to action for all of us to stand up against tyranny and protect the rights of all people. As we reflect on this dark chapter of history, let us also remember the lessons it holds for us today. The apathy and indifference of the wider world towards the plight of prisoners on these ships highlights the dangers of complacency and the need for us to remain vigilant in the face of injustice. By learning from the mistakes of the past, we can work towards creating a better future and ensuring that such atrocities are never repeated. The stories of the prisoners on Japan's hell ships are truly haunting and serve as a reminder of the strength of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable adversity. Their bravery and resilience in the face of such horrors is something to be admired and emulated. By remembering their stories, we can honor their sacrifice and ensure that their suffering was not in vain. If you found this video interesting, please don't hesitate to share it with your friends and family. Thank you for watching and take care.